terrible, terrible human being. He's evil. And he's going to spend the rest of his miserable existence locked in a cage. He's going to spend the rest of his life separated from what means most to him, his family. He will never be free again. And as incredibly distasteful as it was, the state entered into an agreement with Jake for one reason. We needed one thing from him. Guns. That's what we needed from him. Him leading us to those guns was incredibly important. Do you know why? You actually saw it. When this trial first started, you saw some of it in the questions that they were asking about the drugs. And there was a lot of emphasis early on when we were doing the scenes about the drugs at the scene. And you heard about it again when Billy talked about Skid Montgomery. The reason we needed those guns was because of the drugs. The Wagner's defense, from the moment they planned this homicide, the Wagner's defense was going to be that the Rodens were killed because of Chris's drug activity.
All right, Maureen Wayne, I want to go to you first, Marie. A case of this magnitude has got a lot of witnesses. What gets me concerned as a prosecutor is that if I got to put a lot of witnesses on, I'm hoping that the jury's not going to either forget testimony, they're going to wonder, like, why did they have to put all these witnesses on? What did you think in terms of the presentation of the prosecutor, in terms of putting the witnesses on and trying to put it together in summation? Are we getting to the area of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, or are the witnesses that he used, for which they got an incredible break themselves, that's the mother and the brother, who got negotiated their own other family members out of the death penalty, this defendant being one of them, or did they sleep with those dogs and catch the fleas, or was it a good thing for the state?
They didn't exactly catch the fleas, but the fleas are roaming around, and that's why he's trying so hard to use words like he's psychotic, he's going to spend the rest of his miserable life in jail, to show that, you know, we know what we did was wrong, but there was a greater good for laying in bed with these evil, dastardly people, so to speak. And this case has been so long that I wouldn't want to be in the juror's seat right now, because so much it's been what, 50 days, 48 days since this started? It's a lot. It was a lot for the prosecution, and I hope that they continue to hold the jurors' attention, especially for the closing argument, because there's a lot to go back and remember. And this case was a challenge, to say the least.
Yeah, Wayne, we want to keep it short and sweet to the extent we can. I mean, I've tried cases that have been 2 years as a trial, and you've had hundreds of witnesses, but you just don't like it because, you know, people want things in very uniform, very quick and direct ways. I'm curious, Wayne, on your end, summations are probably the #1 way, in my state at least, where a case is going to get reversed. I think myself, I've fallen into the trap too, where I make a comment at one point in time that he was an animal laying in wait. Now, my state's very cautious and very particular, and they were like, well, that was not the evidence that he was an animal, and that comment shouldn't have been made because it could inflame the passionate jury. They didn't reverse it because of the overwhelming amount of evidence, but we're very careful. I'm listening to this guy talk, the prosecutor, talk about him being psychotic, a sick man, evil, he should be in jail. I mean, we may agree with all of those things, but in the state where you practice, is it a bridge too far in summation where an appellate court could sit there and say, no, went over the line there?
Well, the prosecutor always gets held to a higher standard to begin with, and you can get over the line and go a bridge too far. I think the clip that we just saw where we heard a reference to Jake being psychotic was in fact the defense lawyer who was testifying, in fact testifying, because he says, I think he's psychotic. But my recollection is that even the prosecutor said this was a terrible human being and that they were going to spend the rest of their lives in jail. I think that at the end of the day, you're probably going to get to the harmless error standard if there's a conviction here. but it's easy to cross the line, especially if you're on the prosecution side.
Yeah, and agreed, Maria. I mean, it's the number one way, like I said, that we get cases reversed on that. Harmless error, of course, referring to the fact that the court will find that it's a legal standard, but there was probably an overwhelming amount of evidence, but maybe not necessarily given the manner in which the state had to offer all these deals. Another thing that's a big no-no in my state, and every state's different, what about New York, is you can't bring up what the sentence is going to be at all in your summation. That is not evidence as to the guilt or innocence of a defendant. How's it in New York?
In New York, it's the same way. You're not allowed to bring up what the defendant is going to be facing in terms of sentencing to the jurors, because it really will impact them in a way that is not impartial. You're not supposed to bring up, oh, he's going to spend the rest of his life in jail if you do this, or in prison if you do this, or if you don't do it. You're not supposed to do that.
Wayne, let's go to you, just because I think this is a point. We have a lot of people that watch it that are lawyers and true crime aficionados and like to know the ins and outs of it. Summation is a devil's playground for the prosecutor, like we've all said. You got to watch out for that. And the phrase that we use in Jersey is, you can strike hard blows, fair blows, but not foul ones.